Hey everybody, I wanted to show you guys something. Don't go anywhere. Just listen. Listen to that crunchy crust. Now, if it wasn't completely clear, we're gonna be making some sourdough bread today. You're gonna need a couple things: a large mixing bowl, cast iron Dutch oven. If you don't have one, that's okay. You can substitute it with a baking sheet and some hot water. This is gonna help make that beautiful crunchy crust. 300 grams of all-purpose flour or bread flour, as the primary difference between the two is the amount of protein in the flour. 43 grams of whole wheat flour, 200 grams of lukewarm water, 9 grams of salt. I generally use kosher salt when I bake. And last but not least, 227 grams of your sourdough starter. Now, if you don't have a sourdough starter, that's okay. I will be posting a video here shortly about how to cultivate and maintain your own sourdough starter. Now, that should be everything we need. So let's get started. Alright, we're going to try and make this as easy as possible. We're actually going to skip the auto lease just because it's could be a little confusing for people on why we do it. So what we're going to start off with is adding your 227 grams of starter to a bowl. You're going to quickly follow that with the 9 grams of salt and the 200 grams of lukewarm water. Then once you've got all that in the bowl, you're going to take your all-purpose flour or bread flour and you're just going to add the 300 grams to the bowl. If you're over by a little bit or under by a little bit, it's not really a huge deal. We're primarily working with ratios here, so being over a gram or two is not the end of the world. Then after you've added the bread flour, you're going to add the 43 grams of whole wheat flour, and you just kind of get your hands in on that and mix that all together. What you're looking for is you're going to start incorporating all the flour and the water together with the starter, and you're going to try and aim for a nice shaggy dough like you see here. It's going to be a bit sticky, but that's not a huge deal. When you're done and all the flour is incorporated, you're just going to set it off to the side, and you're going to cover it with a towel and leave it for 30 minutes. At the end of your 30 minutes, you can remove the towel and begin doing folds on your dough, working the outside edges of the dough to the center. The purpose of this is to begin building gluten structures within your dough, ultimately making it more elastic and easier to work with. When you're done folding your dough, you're going to replace the towel and let your dough sit for another hour. After that hour, you're going to come back and do the same thing all over again. Only this time, I'm taking my dough and putting it onto a work surface so you can have a better idea of what I mean when I say I'm folding the dough. I'm gently taking the edges of the dough and folding it over itself. You're going to continue this folding and resting process with your dough until you're able to take a small piece of your dough and create what's known as the window pane effect, where you're able to stretch out this small piece of dough between your fingers and have it almost be translucent, being able to see through it. Just remember, after each set of folds, return the dough to the bowl with a towel on top. After you let your dough rest for about an hour, we're going to start shaping our dough. First, you need to flour your work surface. Once you've done that, you're going to take your dough and shake it out of whatever bowl that you were letting it rise in. After you struggle for about 30 seconds to a minute, getting your bowl out of the dough, and you're finally able to get it onto your floured work surface, this is when you start shaping your dough. What you're going to start doing is taking the edges of the dough and folding it over itself, starting with left to right, then right to left, then top to bottom, as you see here. After that, you're going to fold the bottom over the top, then you're going to turn it, and here's where it gets interesting. You start from the top, work your way down, adding twists to the dough. This helps seal it and really get that shape that you want. After you've done these twists, what you want to do is you want to turn the dough over and start sealing the bottom by dragging the dough across your floured work surface. I tend to like to pick up the dough and drag it across the floured work surface a few times just to make sure I really have that seam on the bottom of the dough closed. When I think I'm done shaping my dough, I get out a banneton and then I lightly flour the insides of it. Usually I like to sift some flour just to make sure I get a really nice thin coat so I don't flour the entire surface of the dough and get a really cakey top. So when you've adequately floured the inside of your banneton, go ahead and just lay your little doughboy inside. And what you're going to do after that is you're just going to cover them up, and you're going to let them rise for another hour and a half. You letting it sit out, or you can put it in your fridge and let it rise overnight. Now for the best part, we're actually going to bake the bread. After you set your oven to about 500 degrees and let it preheat with the cast irons inside for about an hour, you're going to get out the piping hot cast iron. You're just going to flour the bottom. Once you've done that, you just drop your little dough boy in there that's been resting for a bit. If it's been in the fridge, just make sure that you let it come to room temperature first. But after you plop it in the bottom of the pan, you can get a really sharp knife or a bread lame, and just put a nice cut right over the top. And then once you've done that, seal that bad boy up and pop it right in the oven for about 28 minutes, covered. And then after that, all you have to do after the 28 minutes, take off the cover and cook it for another 25 minutes, and bam, got this nice, beautiful bread. Now, before I forget to mention, in the baking process, if you remember, I said the alternative to using a Dutch oven would be using a baking sheet to put your bread on. And then all you have to do is get a pot of hot water and put it underneath the baking sheet, so it helps retain the moisture when you bake the bread. Alright guys, if you like what you've seen and want to see more, please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos. Alright, thanks guys. Bye.